My name is Daniel, and at 29, I look older than I should. My dark hair is always messy, as if I haven't had time or strength to care for it, and my eyes carry the weight of sleepless nights and heavy thoughts. My jaw is clenched so often from stress that the lines have etched deep into my face. A year ago, I was a different person, hopeful, ambitious, believing that hard work could change everything. But then came that night, the night everything fell apart. I was sitting in my tiny, cluttered apartment, the only home Mia and I had left after losing our parents. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and cheap takeout. The peeling wallpaper stared back at me, mocking my failures. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the client report on my laptop, a report I had altered, hoping it would save my job. You see, I was drowning. Overwhelmed with 2 jobs, bills stacking up, Mia's school fees, and a constant gnawing fear that I was failing her as a brother and as a man. The deadline was crushing me, and in a moment of desperation, I made a choice. I tweaked the numbers, thinking it was a harmless fix, a patch to buy me time. But it wasn't harmless. The next morning, Claire, my manager, called me into her office. Her eyes were filled with disappointment, not just at me, but at the situation. Daniel, we found the discrepancies in the report, she said softly but firmly. This is serious. We have to let you go. I felt like the air was sucked out of my lungs. My heart hammered painfully in my chest. I wanted to scream, to explain, to beg, but all I could do was nod numbly and walk out, feeling every step heavier than the last. That evening, I sat alone in the dark, the cold apartment closing in. My phone buzzed, messages from friends, colleagues. Silence. The realization hit me, I had lost their trust, my job, my dreams. Then came a soft knock. Mia, my little sister, stood at the door, her big green eyes full of worry and love. Danny. Are you okay? She asked, voice trembling. I wanted to protect her from the truth, to shield her from my shame. So I forced a smile, even though my throat burned with unshed tears. I'm fine, I lied. She didn't buy it. She stepped inside and hugged me tightly, and in that embrace, I felt the depth of my failure, but also the fierce determination not to let her down. That night, lying awake in the dim light, I felt crushed, but somewhere deep inside, a stubborn spark refused to die. A promise to myself formed, no matter how dark the night, the dawn would come. The morning light barely made its way through the cracked, dusty blinds, painting pale stripes across the worn wooden floor. I sat alone at the rickety kitchen table, hands wrapped tightly around a chipped ceramic mug. The lukewarm coffee inside did little to chase away the cold sinking feeling in my chest. My reflection in the window was a stranger, pale, unshaven, eyes hollow but restless. The shadows beneath them were deep reminders of nights spent wrestling with my own doubts. Mia was already gone, her tiny footsteps echoing down the hallway as she left for school. I had packed her lunch with trembling hands, a meager sandwich wrapped in crumpled paper, but it was all I could afford. Her bright green eyes, so full of innocence and trust, were the only thing keeping me from giving up completely. Sometimes, I wondered if she could sense the storm raging inside me, if she knew how fragile I felt. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. An unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered. Daniel? It's Claire. Her voice was calm, gentle, carrying a weight of understanding that I hadn't felt in months. We need to meet. I think I can help. For a flicker of a moment, a fragile hope stirred in my chest. Could someone still believe in me? I agreed. Walking through the crowded city streets that day, I felt exposed, a man in a worn jacket, trying to gather the shattered pieces of his life. The noise around me, the chatter, the honking cars, the laughter, only reminded me how far I'd fallen. At the cafe, Claire greeted me with a warm smile that didn't pity me, but saw the possibility beneath the surface. Daniel, I know it's been rough, she said softly. But I see something in you. I want to offer you an internship. It's not much, and the pay is low, but it's a start. I stared at my hands, rough from years of stress, and whispered, "Why me?" Because sometimes, the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fires. I believe you're ready to be tempered. That day marked a fragile turning point, a path forward through uncertainty. But the scars inside me ran deep, and healing wouldn't come easy. The first days of the internship were harder than I imagined. Every morning, I woke with a tight knot in my stomach, the fear of failure gripping me like a vice. My reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror looked worn out, unshaven, dark circles under my eyes, hair disheveled as if I hadn't slept in days. At work, I was the newbie, the one everyone watched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. In meetings, I struggled to find my voice. My hands shook slightly as I took notes, my heart pounding every time I was asked a question. One afternoon, during a presentation, I stumbled over my words. The room felt suffocating, eyes boring into me. When I finally finished, the silence was deafening. Back in the break room, I sank onto a hard chair, chest heaving. Doubt whispered that I didn't belong here, that I was a failure destined to fall again. But then my phone buzzed, a simple drawing from Mia, two stick figures holding hands under a shining sun. Tears blurred my vision. I typed, "I'm scared I'm not enough." Claire replied almost instantly, "Fear is part of the journey. Courage is moving forward despite it." Those words became my lifeline. I started pushing myself, staying late to learn new skills, asking questions even when my voice shook. Small victories built slowly into confidence. One cold evening, walking home under glowing street lamps, I breathed deeply, feeling a fragile hope growing inside me. But just as I started to believe in myself, life threw another challenge, one that would test every ounce of my strength. Just as I was beginning to feel a fragile sense of hope, life hit me with a blow I hadn't expected. It was late one night when my phone rang, piercing the quiet darkness of my apartment. The voice on the other end was shaky, Mia's teacher calling to say Mia had collapsed at school and was being rushed to the hospital. My heart slammed against my ribs as I grabbed my coat and bolted into the cold night. The city streets blurred past me, but I only saw the image of Mia, my brave little sister, lying unconscious in a sterile hospital room. The walls were stark white, buzzing with machines and the scent of antiseptics. I sat by her bed, gripping her small hand, feeling the steady but fragile beat of life. Fear clawed at me, threatening to overwhelm everything. Days stretched on in a blur of doctors' voices, whispered prayers, and sleepless nights. I held Mia's hand, whispering promises I hoped she could hear in her dreams. "I'm here, Mia. You have to fight. We'll get through this together." Claire visited often, bringing quiet support and warm meals. Her presence reminded me I wasn't alone. "Daniel," she said softly, "this is just another chapter in your story. You have more strength than you know." When Mia finally opened her eyes, relief crashed over me like a wave. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I smiled at her, the light in the darkest storm. That moment rekindled my determination. I realized that no matter the odds, I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. But the journey to healing and success still had many trials ahead. The days after Mia's recovery felt like waking up from a long, dark nightmare. The tiny apartment that once seemed suffocating now felt like home again, a place of hope rather than despair. I poured every ounce of energy into my internship, determined to prove to myself and everyone else that I could rise from the ashes. Claire's offer to join the company full-time felt like a distant dream, until one chilly morning when she handed me the contract. My hands trembled as I signed it, the weight of that paper heavier than any burden I'd carried before. It wasn't just a job, it was a second chance. At work, I began to rebuild my confidence piece by piece. I stayed late, asked questions, took on projects no one else wanted. The skeptical looks from colleagues slowly turned into nods of approval and, eventually, respect. Mia's laughter at home became my anchor, a reminder of why I fought so hard. She blossomed into a confident, joyful girl, and I was there to support her every step of the way. One evening, as I stood watching the city skyline glitter with lights, my phone buzzed. A message from my estranged father, a man I hadn't spoken to in years. Daniel, I'm sorry for everything. Can we try again? My breath caught. The wounds from the past still stung, but maybe forgiveness was the last piece of the puzzle. I typed slowly, let's take it one step at a time. Looking out at the glowing horizon, I realized my journey wasn't over. But now, I had the strength, the hope, and the fire to keep moving forward. Success was sweeter than I'd imagined, but it brought its own shadows. With my new position came expectations that weighed heavily on me. Some nights, the pressure twisted into a gnawing fear. What if I failed again? What if all this was just a fragile illusion? One late evening, alone in the dim glow of my office, I stared at the screen, the silence pressing in. My reflection looked tired, haunted by worry. Doubts whispered cruel questions. Was I really capable? Did I deserve this? I reached for my phone and called Claire. When she answered, her calm voice was a lifeline. Daniel, even the strongest feel doubt, she said gently. What matters is that you don't let it stop you. Her words settled around me like a shield. I realized that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Slowly, I saw balance between work, family, and myself. I began to lean on those around me, learning that strength can come from connection. But the past still lingered, and new challenges loomed ahead. The weight of responsibility sometimes felt crushing, especially when Nia's laughter echoed through our small apartment, a sweet reminder of everything I fought for. After months of pushing myself alone, exhaustion finally caught up with me. One evening, I found myself sitting on the floor, overwhelmed and defeated. That's when Sarah came over, a friend who had quietly supported me from the sidelines. She sat beside me, her presence calm and steady. You don't have to carry this all alone, Daniel, she said softly, her eyes filled with understanding. Her words cracked the walls I had built around myself. For so long, I had believed asking for help was weakness. But with Sarah's support, I began reaching out, to family, old friends, and even those I had pushed away. Slowly, I rediscovered joy beyond the grind. Moments of peace, laughter, and connection became the foundation of my strength. I realized that true courage wasn't just about fighting battles, but knowing when to lean on others. Years later, standing on a brightly lit stage to accept an award for leadership and resilience, I scanned the crowd. There, in the front row, sat Nia, grown, confident, her eyes shining with pride. The journey from that broken young man in a cramped apartment to this moment was nothing short of a miracle. I thought back to the small fire inside me, that stubborn, flickering flame that refused to be snuffed out by despair. Success hadn't come from avoiding failure, it had come from rising each time I fell, stronger and more determined. As I finished my speech, my phone buzzed quietly in my pocket. A message from my father appeared. Thank you, son, for teaching me how to forgive. A smile spread across my face. The weight of the past had lifted. The ashes beneath me weren't ruins, they were the foundation of everything I had become. And that fire inside me? It burned brighter than ever.